Hey guys, welcome to Bud Lamb Talks, where with resources and stories we hope to encourage you to know, love, and enjoy God, to follow Him with your heart, and to love like Jesus. Hey guys, good morning. This is Bud again, and I'm here with Aaron Carr, and he's sitting in his, where are you sitting right now?
I'm sitting in my Porsche Boxster. It's a really rainy day, and this is the only private area I have in our new office because we've changed office space, and now we have like 3 surgeons per office, so we don't have any private areas now. So it's just a nice rainy day and in Georgia. So it's a good day to be in by the fire, I think.
So have you got a virtual fireplace going on in your in your car there?
Not quite. I do have the heated leather seats going though, so that's pretty good. Good alternative.
Well, I'm in California. We woke up to 35 degrees this morning, and frost was everywhere. And
Wow.
I don't know what it's like in Atlanta in the wintertime, but it doesn't get in the mid 30s like this very much. But when it does, it's kind of like, wow, all the roofs are frosty and stuff like that. But it's going to be clear today. It's going to be a nice day. We've had a bunch of rain over the last couple of days, but it's it's kind of like that, the way that the tide goes in and out, the way the clouds go in and out. We don't get hit with weeks of rain and stuff like that. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, here it's more in the 40s, but I think sometimes it's kind of rainy, and sometimes I think the humidity, a little higher humidity here makes it feel sometimes a little cooler because the humidity tends to be a little higher. But yeah, it's a good day to be indoors.
Yeah. Well, you asked me how I've been over the last week or 2 weeks. I became aware that I was feeling unsettled in many ways, and I hadn't been able to put my fingers on it at all. But the truth is, there was stuff going on that I was not aware of, or I was not paying attention to. And there were clues, but I wasn't picking up on them. And those had a way of being annoying and aggravating and distracting. And I was just totally unaware of it, unaware of it. And I was talking to a friend of ours named Mike, another Barnabas brother. And I asked him that question, how have you been? And he used that word, unsettled. And when he said that, instantly that touched, what do they call those special points in your body? You know this.
Pressure points?
Yes, there you go.
Yeah.
It touched one of those pressure points that said, yes, that's it. And as I heard him talk about what those annoying things were, it helped me put voice to what was going on with me as well. And that was tremendous.
Yeah.
Because I felt like sometimes I feel like a boxer, that's standing in the ring with a bag over my head, and I'm getting the crap beat out of me, but I don't know who's hitting me from what direction, or any of that kind of stuff. To be able to have the bag taken off and be able to be aware. Actually, aware is not the right word. Attentive. Paying attention to me right now is a better word than being aware. Aware can be passive. Attentive is something that I have intention to and responsibility around. I can, to be attentive to something means I'm responsible for some outcomes here. Anyway, that's how I've been.
Yeah. So what was it that kind of, I guess, made you more attentive to your state? Was it just the conversation with the Barnabas friend, or was it something else?
No, it was that conversation. It was that the conversation itself was an intervention. And yeah, and so it was the trajectory changed. I mean, the momentum moved. Something shifted inside, and it's been shifting in that direction since. Now, the things that were annoying haven't gone away.
Right.
But it's that attitude side of things that we have some kind of control over. Um, so
Yeah,
yeah.
it kind of makes me think about like your iPhone or computers, and about how you can have programs running in the background that slow the system down, and you're not aware of it. I think
Mm,
about it's not as bad with like the iPhones, but definitely I have my in front of me. I have an older computer I bought it in 2012, and it's still running great, but it's still, you can tell it's a little sluggish. Probably, you have those background programs running, and you're not even aware of it. I think it's the same thing with us. A lot of times, in our subconscious, we have things running, things wearing us down, and sometimes um, uh, it can be going at just as wearing us down just a little bit at a time, and it kind of it gets to that point where it's more of a critical mass before we're aware of it. Because I've felt the same thing over the last few weeks. I think I've been more fatigued, a little busier at work on a few days, and then just felt, I think, a combination of the fatigue, just felt kind of um, lack of motivation, just like cannot get routines going, cannot get motivated to ride or do what I need to do. So I guess my feeling, yours has been more of a sense of, I guess, a motivation.
yes. Hmm. Right. Yeah. So
So
anyway, that's what's
yeah.
been going on. And that man, that stuff is hard to shake. Um, Fortunately, there are certain rhythms that I'm drawn to, that that help um, that help me, that are already in place. They're kind of like guardrails.
Mhm.
One of those one of those rhythms is getting up early in the morning, having coffee, and
Yes.
sitting with God. I mean that. Even that felt unsettled.
Mhm.
Um, but at least I have that rhythm. I have a rhythm of making a good breakfast,
Mhm.
and I have a rhythm of stretching. And so some of those kinds of things that we that we work real hard to get into place, you know, can can keep me steady instead of heading over a cliff, which is one of the ways that I ended up getting in trouble as a human being was heading over a cliff trying to find some way to feel better no matter what, and man, then that creates a whole, the word unsettled is not the right word. Catastrophe is a better word.
Right. Right.
Um, and so yeah, I really want to keep learning and leaning into this piece because like we were talking last time that we spoke together on a podcast, we talked about the wilderness of the COVID, the wilderness that this kind of a place brings onto us, and how it's kind of it's consuming like a thick heavy coat. It's like a thick gray. The cloud cover is very low and thick and dark, and I'm not sure I shared it with you, but I found a new word creeping into my language as I was thinking about this wilderness kind of experience. Was the word oh, it's that A word. Yeah. Uh,
Oh, I,
well,
I hate that. I hate that when you're looking for that specific word and just cannot find it. The but yeah, but I agree with you on the kind of the rhythms that we have that kind of uh, keep us kind of on track. I think about when we're talking about the wilderness is kind of, you and I enjoy a lot of outdoor activities, but um, I especially where I live now, I can hike along the Appalachian Trail, and when you're on the trail for several days, you get into a certain rhythm on the trail, um, and, um, and a lot of times it's not necessarily very glamorous things, but it's like really important things. Like when you get up in the morning, you may be a little, you get up in the morning, it's generally cold, and so you got to get your body temperature up a little bit. So you make
Yeah.
coffee, have something to eat, then you may stretch a little bit, and then you kind of get into the rhythm of the day. I would have like certain foods that I look forward to at certain times of the day to kind of give you that sense of rhythm. But it's not really glamorous things. It's, when you get to your camp at night, purify the water so you have things ready the next day. You set things up in a certain rhythm, but it kind of keeps you, you know, um, and sometimes a safe way. It keeps you in a certain safe way, so you keep your clothing, dry, or you have a certain way of doing things so that if a storm comes up or something unexpected happens, you have everything organized in a way. But it's a very rhythmic, cyclic thing that is not necessarily glamorous or interesting, but it gives you, the ability to really experience nature in a way that's not dangerous and really fun. So the discipline of that rhythm ends up giving you the freedom to be able to explore the wilderness in all of its wildness.
Right. Without being at risk.
Exactly, exactly.
Right.
So, um, but so I think, with our last conversation talking about the COVID wilderness, I think it kind of, that idea just, it resonates with us because we enjoy kind of the outdoor pursuits. And how does some of these physical things we do, how does that relate to maybe some of the more internal things with our emotional state, our spiritual state, our relational state. But I think you can draw a lot of parallels from wilderness and from the physical pursuits. There are a lot of parallels to our, emotional, spiritual, relational state as well, where a lot of those rhythms that you have aren't necessarily that, in and of themselves, aren't that interesting, but they kind of keep you, um, you know, going along the direction that you want to go.
Like like uh like rhythms. You talk about relational rhythms, right? Um,
Right.
like I've noticed in our calls that if we miss one
Hmm.
or we miss two in a row, all of a sudden we haven't talked in a month.
Right.
And it can get to be like, ooh, how's it going here, man? And it stays surface for the first, way too long or whatever. I've
Right.
noticed certain kind of rhythms with my wife. If we're not, because we're used to running pretty close together,
Hmm.
keeping short accounts, not letting things build up, and checking in sometimes daily around things, and if that goes too long, then it's like dashboard indicators start coming on. I
Right.
start becoming resentful about stuff, or I'm impatient. Um, and that's when I can creep into um, um, shading the truth, or not truth telling in certain areas, especially when it comes to, you know, private behavior and stuff like that. And then again, I'm heading over the cliff.
Right.
So just maintaining those regular rhythms can keep us from disaster. Just like kind of Dave Ramsey on the financial side of stuff. He says, have a spending plan and live to your spending plan, and you do that, and you pretty much guarantee the fact that you're going to not have any unexpected issues because you're working the plan and showing up for it regularly. And yeah, anyway.
Yeah. The other thing that I think, I find lately has been helpful is also thinking about, um, you know, I kind of think of myself, or humans, we kind of like have a physical, we're a physical being in the way we interact. we have this like emotional, intelligent aspect and the spiritual aspect. I also think about how each of those like interrelate to each other. So for me, I've been more mindful of when I'm physically tired, how maintaining some of those rhythms, especially relationally, I don't have as much energy to listen like I normally would, how it impacts all the other areas. And how, specifically, and we've talked about this before, a lot of times too, our clues, physical clues, a lot of times are sometimes the first clues we pick up on that maybe things aren't going the way they need to be going, and maybe we're headed towards that cliff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The physical clues. We're
Yeah.
more tuned into that,
Yeah.
and yet I'm I'm sensing, going back to this unsettledness, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sensing the need to become more attuned
Mm-hmm.
to what's going on around me, more aware, more more aware, just so I'm not caught off guard, so I'm almost anticipating, waking
Yeah.
up in the morning. In fact, a question that I often ask first thing in the morning is, what might be difficult about today? But come
Mm-hmm.
on, think through the day. What might be just getting ready to go haywire? What do you need to be on guard for? You
Yeah.
overscheduled your day. You got too much going on. That kind of question. Do you ever sit down at the beginning of the morning and look at your day and go, holy mackerel, I've got more surgeries today than I have time for, or whatever? Do you do that?
Oh yeah. I mean, for me, it's more of it's just overwhelming sense of dread sometimes, and it's like it more when I get out of the generally just like hits me when I first get out of my bed. I get out of the bed, and then you just have this. I have sometimes will have this just overwhelming sense of dread, like how am I going to get through the day? And so for me, a good portion of my morning is just not letting that kind of fear-based anxiety, kind of rule in the morning.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think a lot of times we are like overscheduled, overbooked, or in my case, a lot of times we have unexpected things that come into our schedule. So but but that's one of the things you know this year that I wanted to do better about is being reflective of either the week, either being kind of reflective of what's happened the previous week, and then looking forward to the next week of what I can do better, or even doing that on a daily basis. I've always felt like I tend to be more um, reactionary. I do have a certain structure to the day, but I tend to be more reactionary to the day versus not being as reactionary and planning things out. So I find like I think for me that would be how I don't have a question necessarily that I start the day with, but that may be would I think would be very helpful to do that, to start the day with certain questions to kind of get you tracking along a certain course.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, right.
You talk about rhythms. The other thing I think is interesting is we're doing this video chat, and most of our conversations in the past have always been just through a phone. And I find I like seeing you, but it's a different rhythm to like engage someone through video versus just the phone. I feel like you and I, in some ways, have a better rhythm because we just haven't done the video chatting as much when we almost through the phone. I don't know if you've found that to be the case. But I think with the video, it's nice to be able to see kind of actually how you're doing versus how you say you're doing in some ways too.
Yes, 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 yes. More wilderness adjustments. Yes. Huh. One thing, yeah, 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 it is. Hmm. What is there anything in scripture that's been jumping out to you over the last couple of weeks? Any particular themes presenting themselves? Anything you're learning from another podcast or something that's kind of scratching you where you itch?
Well, one of the passages that's really been I've been thinking about a lot, several months, is it's a Bible verse, 1 John 3:19-20, and it's the translation I have is, "If our hearts condemn us, we know that God is in control." And so, because you talk about, I get up in the morning and that primitive, hippocampus brain starts like condemning me. You're not going to be able to make it through the day. Your gut, that survival mechanism, it can be good. Maybe if we're trying to survive the wilderness, but it just starts condemning me. Like, you can't make it. You can't pull through. You're not good enough. And so literally just reminding me myself that, hey, God's in control. And it's literally like just that simplistic of a reminder to me has been like a lifesaver, honestly, through the last several weeks where I've just been tired and just have not had a lot of motivation. I feel like I haven't been able to get certain things in gear like I wanted to. And then even when I did have time, just had like no motivation. But I just think about that when I think you could, I don't know what the actual translation is, but I think you could probably substitute heart for mind. I think, when your mind condemns you, God's in control. So a lot of times it feels like it's my mind that's coming against me,
Right.
And
Go
and
ahead.
along those lines, I also looked at a quote that I had read from it's a great book. He's an atheist. He's not Christian, but I think his insight in things is really good. That was Sam Harris, and he had a quote which I'm kind of reading from his book, which I think is great. Almost all of our suffering is the product of our thoughts. We spend nearly every moment of our lives lost in thought and hostage to the character of those thoughts. You can break the spell, but it takes training, just like it takes training to defend yourself against a physical assault.
Whoa.
Yeah.
read that last sentence again.
Yeah. You can break the spell, but it takes training, just like it takes training to defend yourself against a physical assault.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it sounds like what he's saying is that we're responsible for running our own head, or we're not victims to whatever goes through our heads and how much we have to pay attention to it.
Right. I think of the scriptures that said, I'm paraphrasing, but think on those things that are good, lovely, because our natural survival primitive brain is to think on the negative things in life, and we have to train ourselves to, when our minds or our hearts condemn us, God is in control.
Right. Yeah, I think you're talking from Philippians 4:6-8, something like that. Whatever is true, lovely, set your mind on these things.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And does he talk about us being lazy in our thinking in that quote, or just that we have to be in training about it? Or
Well, it kind of implies that. He says we spend nearly every moment of our lives lost in thought. Lost in thought.
Right. Right. Uh-huh. Unaware.
Right. Unaware.
Unaware, not paying attention, inattentive.
Right. As we kind of mentioned before, it's like we have a program running in our subconscious that we're not actively aware of. That
Right.
But it's yeah. So those are so. Yeah, so those are some of the kind of things I've kind of been thinking along those lines.
Wow.
Uh,
Wow. Yeah. Hmm.
How about you? Any Bible verses, mantras, or other
Yeah.
thoughts that have been hitting you?
Well, not so much mantras or something, but um, this idea of um, the wilderness of this one time that we're in on the planet here in 2021, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and the grasping for straws that I find myself doing sometimes to make sense of things and asking the question, what in the world's going on? You know, what in the,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, in the much larger picture, you know, not from even 35,000 feet, you know, what's going on from, you know, 20,000 feet looking down, you know, a bazillion looking down on the planet. What in the world is going on? And the world and the word wilderness certainly does seem to have that, because all of us are in either in an individual wilderness where, you know, somebody is working at home as a single parent, and they've got two kids that are bouncing off the walls, and they're working a job that's trying to pay the bills, and they're glad to have the job, and there's nobody in their life that they can truly talk about what's going on, and they're isolated. Man, that's a wilderness. That is it's brutal, and it's exposed to the elements, and there's just, you know, a lot of different kinds of those wilderness kinds of experiences that humans are having. You know, I'm not living in that kind. I have a different kind of a wilderness experience, and so it kind of makes me think about, in a much larger word, and the word wilderness is certainly, I think, a good one. But I found myself working with a word and thinking into the idea of apocalypse, apocalyptic, and in biblical sense, um, you know, apocalypse has this sense of the future, um, kind of an end to things as we know them, and the beginning of things new and more vital and more full of eternity in, you know. And so what, whereas the wilderness thing kind of seems to be something that we can tap into and drop out of, that it'll end, we can see an ending, we have a hope that that this ending is going to come, and we're going to get back to normal, where we can actually jump on an airplane and go places and take our kids to Disneyland, you know, and we can go eat out, and we can have folks over. We don't have to worry about worshiping in church from spending things, wearing things on our faces. You know, we want to get back to normal, you know. But this word apocalyptic seems to have a, when I go back to this thick, heavy fog that seems to be hanging over us, it seems to be a word that is more descriptive, that apocalyptic does. It has a better descriptive word to it. And all it does is it brings me back to the same place, and it's like, well, how then are we supposed to live? You know,
Right.
how shall I, with me as just an individual, how shall I carry myself on the planet? And I keep coming back to, there's nothing special about this. What's special about this is, with my neighbor, I need to be quick to be a neighbor. I need to be quick to find the common ground between somebody who has a flaming political disposition different than mine.
Yeah.
Find my common ground, to, rather than diss them off and keep them and say, well, and write them off, but to really truly seek to find a common ground with my neighbor in that way, my common humanity, um, to go the extra mile, to turn the cheek, you know, to be patient, to extend grace, to really, really be quick to forgive people instead of holding out for payback. You
Yeah.
know, Jesus' teachings were timeless, and you know, I find myself have been reading what he was saying to folks, you know, those last few days before he was crucified. He had
Mhm.
some powerful things to say for how we needed to, you know, to carry ourselves as Christ followers, and he was also real clear. You know, you're not gonna. you're going to experience a degree of suffering and adversity and difficulty that you've never experienced before. And the way that I mess around with that word is that phrase in the Serenity Prayer of accepting hardship as a pathway to peace.
Yeah.
And so for me in this last couple of weeks since we've talked has been just more of the ordinary of working the simple things, working a program, turning the other cheek, you know, trusting God, trying to keep the lines of communication open, not trying to hide things, being straight up and, you know, and doing the work, making sure I've got my water bottle on my hip when I'm going for a run, so I don't end up getting dehydrated and all that stuff. So it's been pretty ordinary when it comes back to it.
Yeah. It reminds me of a quote I heard recently on a podcast. Is a Mark Twain quote that I had never heard before, but I think in you thinking about, you know, how should we live in these apocalyptic times, so to speak. Mark Twain said, "There isn't time. So brief is life for bickerings, apologies, heartburnings, callings to account.
Mm.
There is only time for loving, and but an instant, so to speak, for that."
Wow.
Right? Isn't that great?
Yeah.
It's so true. There's not. It's just, you know. Anyway, I thought that kind of really summed up just kind of what you said about how, yeah, times we're even more aware of the brevity of time, and we don't have time for all of this bickerings. But we do have time for loving.
Yes. Wow. Well, Aaron, that's a great way to end our end our talk this time, man. Did you script it? I know you didn't, but that's great.
Yeah. No, it just reminded me of that quote. So it worked out good. Yep. Well, always good to talk with you. Never enough time seems like to catch up.
Yeah, I'm going to end the recording here, but let's stay on it here together for a minute, okay?